All right, ladies and gentlemen of Detailing for the Money, this video is for you. It's about aluminum polishing. So this is a motorcycle, the front forks, and you can see this is kind of what I started with. Pretty rough. Got some pitting at the top, and it's cast, and people say, oh, you can't get cast that good. And for the newbies that aren't sure, a little magnet saves you a lot. So if it doesn't stick, most likely aluminum. If you look up here, aluminum. Now on the chrome, it's real easy. You get you a cup of water, get you some aluminum foil. Yeah, imagine that. Be careful of all the other external paint. And all you gotta do is just rub that shit in. And you think it's gonna scratch the chrome, but there's a chemical reaction between the aluminum and the oxide, if I remember right. Don't quote me on that. I know there's going to be people beating me up. But you just rub it down. You think it's going to scratch the crap out of it. It's not. Just watch the paint. It's the biggest thing, obviously. Just give it a good rub down. I don't know why, but you'll feel it get smooth. You'll be under it, and you scrape on it a little bit, and then all of a sudden it'll get smooth on you. But once you get done, you wipe it down. I'm not even let that bitch dry, so hold on a second. Nope, I'm gonna keep recording. Let it dry. You can see the little sparkles there. I'll speed it up. Make sure it aerates. So you can see what we got there to what he used to have. Very quickly and effectively, you can polish chrome with simple shit. And one last picture, because there was a couple marks from my rag in there, just to let you know it's like just about perfect. Okay, so for aluminum, people ask, and you can see the difference. I mean, this one's got still some pits up to the top, but you gotta be careful up there. It's rough. And you can start with a very low grit, like 60 grit, and I've had it where the scratches are so bad. But I'm letting you know, if you go down that far to bring it back up, you're gonna sit and scratch and scratch and scratch and scratch and scratch and scratch and sand and sand and sand and sand and more and more and more and more. So you kinda gotta be careful on how you do that. But the proper technique is a crosshatch, you know, so you this way, but then you 45 another way. Just like you would be wet sanding paint. Hint, hint. But if you look real close, you can see, because of the casting on it, we have a lot of striations going this way. So if we're trying to go up and then crosshatch, we're going to get rid of those. I don't want to go that far. I just want to make them look as better than what they are and get them popping as best I can without spending 4 and 5 and 6 and maybe even 3 weeks on some cast bullshit. So we're just trying to get it better than what it is and looking good. So on this one, you can start with like a 600. I'm going a little deeper, or a little lighter. I'm going with 800. And you just, sand away. And when you get in an area like that, you band it back and then you sand back and forth. So you sand with 8. A little bit more water. A little bit more sanding. Okay, so if you're sanding with a real low grit and you're starting with like a 60 grit sandpaper and you got to go down on the casting and sand the crap out of it and make it all flush, your mark as far as uniform scratches, and here how I'm saying this, so you can go 60, 80, 90, 150. Once you start hitting that 175 to 220 range, this is where it becomes really important that your sanding marks are unbelievably uniform. We're past that. I'm not trying to get to that level here, but I'm just letting people know that's your mark right in that area, 175 to 220. You got to sand the ever-loving crap out of it to get everything uniform to make sure you don't have any blemishes. It's really, really important in that area that everything is flush. So anything prior to that, you make sure that you level it out and take your time with it, because this, and you can use like hand sanders, that's fine. But once it comes down to this, like I said, you want to be in that mark, and you want it as uniform as you can get. I know there's some spots in here, but I'm not shooting for total perfection here. I'm shooting for better than what he has. So with that said, if you're trying to shoot for perfection, you got to get all these little dots out, and that's the 800's not going to cut it. But as far as I'm getting with the 800, I'm now going to step down to 1,000 grit sandpaper, or step up to 1,000 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to keep going there all the way up to 5,000 on this piece of aluminum. Sand, 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 sand. So once you get done and you know that everything's pretty much scuffed off with the 800, that's when you start stepping down, or stepping up with the 1,000 grit and higher. And there's some guys that are going to go, well, you can just burn this in with the high-speed rotary. You're right. If you have a cast piece, you can burn a lot of this in and save yourself a lot of a sanding time. Meaning by burning is you're actually pushing the pad. And I know the paint guys that do correction flip out when I say this, but when you're on aluminum like this, you actually want to burn the pad enough to get that aluminum hot to get the atoms moving to give uniformity. But what happens there is the aluminum gets hot. This is a charged unit, so it's like a strut. If you start heating up on this thing too much, you're going to have a seal blow. Do not, under any circumstances when you're under these motorcycles, do you get one of those type of polishers out to this aluminum. You're going to cause a problem. It may not be right away. You may not blow the seal right away. But damn well sure it's not going to be long before that seal starts to take a dive because you wanted to save some time and polish this thing out with a high-speed rotary. Don't do it. I don't even know how else to say that. Don't do it. If you see pro shops or whatever do it, cool. Let them fuck up. Don't do it on these. That's all I'm telling you. So here I am, 1,000 grit, wet sand this down, and I'll go all the way up to, again, 5,000. Okay, you can see it's not perfect, and if you see dark spots, you want to kind of keep going there, but a little bit here and there is okay, especially if you're burning it in like we were talking about before. But we're not going to burn this in, you know this. But the whole objective is to get that sanded to where it's looking relatively uniform, and to me it's just about uniform. This area is a little not quite, but good enough. This is going to end up matching. So what you do next, so I got a little bit of Mothers, and I got a little bit of I don't know what this is, I forget what it's called, but you guys know what it is. Anyway, pretty easy. Mothers a little bit, I think it's Eagle that has this. That's who that is. Now look, for whatever reason, when you combine these two together, it does give a superior shine. I don't know why. So I smear a lot down here in the corners where I'm not going to be able to get my polisher, and I let it sit. And the chemical reaction that it has, that's why this stuff turns black, because it's a chemical reaction. The longer you let it sit, the better. So I put a bunch up on there, and I know there's guys, oh, that's the wrong way to do it. But just watch. I mean, it's pretty easy at this point. I like to let it sit and kind of work itself in. You can see I got a dinky little polisher. You want a nice hard pad, relatively hard pad, and if you need to go lighter, then you go lighter. But once this pad's used for this, you don't use it for anything else. Kind of spread that around, and I'm going to polish away because I can't hold my phone and polish at the same time, and I'll show you guys the end result. So after polishing it, now look, it's not perfect. Look at the bike though. I mean, dude, big old chip out of here. It's an old bike. But you can see it looks way better than what it did. We got some good gloss out of it. We got some good reflection out of it. But here's the big kicker. You may have forgot what we started with. Now, if you keep sanding, and you keep sanding, and you sand and sand and sand and sand until that thing's all flat and then polish it out, that thing will look like chrome. It'll look like a piece of plastic chrome if you do it right. But still, again, it's not perfect. I still need to get in like places I can't get to with my polisher by hand. But that's where you sand a lot finer, and you sand finer. You sand more with the finer grits. You keep sanding, it'll almost polish itself with some sandpaper, and if you're wet sanding, it'll almost polish out as good as this. And then you can just put your finger on it and rub it, and it'll end up coming out like this. So that is the best way that I know of to polish cast aluminum, and you can get it to shine. Now once we're done, you coat it, it pretty well stays like that. And that's it. Thanks guys.